Shuker. Rich has been a friend of the grassroots movement through the last 5 years of its existence, but I think he was active long before that. Rich is by profession a financial planner, has been doing that for almost 35 years at this point, since 1980. A lot of experience in that field. That's the kind of guy you want crunching those numbers for something as significant as how are we going to fund our schools if we eliminate the property tax. But he's also been very active with a number of grassroots groups to encourage folks like you to get involved in our political process. So that is enough from me, and we'll bring Rich up. And Rich has told me that he prefers that if you have a question as it goes along, you go ahead and raise your hand, and you can get your question answered on the spot, which I think is terrific. So he's got a good hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and feel free to ask your questions as it goes along. Rich?
I want to thank everybody for coming out, and I want to thank Jamie to invite me. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit disappointed. I don't have anybody to debate. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take the information that they are giving out, the false information, and we're going to go through the presentation that the people who are opposed this gave to the Senate. So we will have a debate. But what we're going to do is expose a lot of the misinformation that's being given out there. Before I start that, I brought a bunch of information I've laid up here. This here is all just about 76. This here is about all the taxes in Michigan, and these are important because of what's happening here. This is all the Texas studies on property taxes. This is all the propaganda used against it. This is Seth Grove's Bill 1189, which is the same as Michigan. And this is the bill that started this problem. Act 511-1965. Prior to that, we didn't have any of these problems. But because of that act, and whoever drew this out, I want to thank. And I'd like to have permission to use it. Prescriptions or property taxes. Seeds for property taxes. Now, mother, we still have our health. Kicked out of the house. This is happening time and time again for seniors. But there's a bigger problem here. I know the legislators do not want to discuss because of property taxes or foreclosures. They continue to tell me, well, one doesn't fit into the other. But what I do know is this. If you take $200, $300, $400 a month out of the budget, it hurts. And it causes problems. So property taxes, from a total financial point of view, is causing a minimum of 80% of the foreclosures in the state. I want to touch on that. The educational system wants to talk about money. Where does the educational system get all the money to fund schools? Property taxes? Right? How about the general fund, special funds, the federal funds, and other funds? Projected this year, the state is going to give, on top of the $13 billion that's collected for property taxes, they're going to give an additional $14.6 billion. That's $27 billion, isn't it? But is that the only funding for that? The one thing I'm glad Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Priority Center put in print is an average of 82% of all your local taxes also goes to education. You have your local income tax, you have your miscellaneous taxes, 82% of that money also goes to education. Any of you have kids in school? You have to pay for extra activity? The grandkids have to pay for extra activity? Yep. When I used to go to my grandkids' games at school, I had to pay to get in. Is that a tax? Yes, it is. How much money does this educational need to have? Do they really need all of this money? Budget and policy priorities stated in their report, if they do not use the method of restrict spending in 76, they're saying to use a sales tax and an income tax. The income tax would have to go from 3.1 to 6.8, and the sales tax would have to go from 6 to 15.3. That's the projections by the budget and policy priorities. And that's probably true, as long as we have the unfair sales tax in the state. Budget and policy priorities from Washington, D.C. did an explanation of all the sales taxes in all the states across the nation. And the sales tax in Pennsylvania is discriminatory. Why? Because of all the exemptions. We can't tax chauffeured limousines. We can't tax airplanes. We can't tax helicopters. But they sure can tax your car, can't they? Why are all these exemptions? In my personal opinion, from a financial point of view, an exemption is not but one thing. A group or an organization saying, I don't want to pay my share. And who is that group? Is it the middle class? Retired? You have no choice. Who gets all the exemptions?
Legislature.
Wealthy. Legislators. That's why there's such a problem. The massive spending is one thing, but the corruption in the taxation is something else. There was a letter sent out by Budget and Policy Priorities, and I responded to it, and as the gentleman said earlier about the spending, he's 100% correct. From 2000 to 2010, can anybody tell me how many students left the educational system in Pennsylvania? 70,000. Now, if we have 70,000 less students, do we need as many teachers? Do we need as many staffers? No. But during that same period of time, the educational system hired over 35,000 new staffers and helpers. Now, I don't know if anybody in Harrisburg ever took the time to figure this out. This is costing you, the taxpayers, over $2 billion a year of wasted money. Property tax relief that works. Pennsylvania Policy Perspectives webinar series put on by the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center. I have an article here that says, get the facts about it. This is right off their website. create greater challenges for local communities to fund their schools and educate their children. Local. In the state of Pennsylvania, who is supposed to increase taxes to run the state? The House of Representatives. It is not the school districts. It is not the school boards. It is Harrisburg. And what happened with this is, in 1965, when they gave the authority over to the local communities, they gave their responsibility that roll up till today. The $13 billion that the schools collect locally, what kind of oversight does the legislator have on that money? Done. You want to talk about local control? In your district, when the schools wanted to raise their budget, how many of you had a chance to vote on it? What kind of control do you have? When they wanted to do that, go to the legislator and ask him if he voted on it. Guess what he's going to tell you? No. Well, then who controls this? Who really controls this out of control spending? Just recently in Reading, they put a report out. 10 of the districts want an exemption so they can spend more money. Guess how many of the 10 got approved? All of them. All of them. Why? Give that some thought. Why? I mean, if you as the citizens have no say, that means it has to go to the school itself. So the school asks for exemptions, who actually the schools are all covered by unions. They go to the Department of Education, who are also union people. So you have one union group saying to another union group, I want to take more money from these people. They have never been denied. I want to go back to the spending a little bit. We have all the money here. What about the escalating debt? From 2005 through last year, the debt for the school districts went up 100%. Is that another cost? It definitely is. So they say greater challenge for local communities to control their schools and educate their children. It's not for you. They're not talking about you. They're talking about the school districts controlling it and not you. They state here, give large tax breaks to wealthy homeowners. Well, I kind of scratch my head with this. Why are the wealthy against it? I don't care which organization you look at. NFIB was supposed to be here tonight. 80% of the groups that belong to NFIB are not wealthy. 20% are. So who did they cater to? They catered to the 20%. They didn't care about the small businesses. But the question is why? 76, yes, it expands the sales tax 1%. Taking it up. But it also makes it wider. More products are taxed. And the items that are primarily taxed here are by the affluent. Now, a real quick example. I've done the math on this, and I cannot figure out anybody making less than $250,000 a year hurting on the 76 program. It's all above that. High priority taxes are a localized problem. You all agree with that? It is. But what caused the problem? In 1965, we did not have an inequity in funding across the state. But today in Montgomery County, it costs $23,000 per child. In some of the school districts, it's as little as 8. Why did this happen? Because of local control by the school boards. It is unfair funding. There's no question about it. But the question is, why is it that in a district that pays $8,000 a student gets the same results as a district that spends $23,000? They talk about trouble paying the property taxes. They want a better targeted strategy. I have a question. If a police officer would target a specific group, would they not be in violation of the law? Yeah. You are not supposed to target. You are not supposed to discriminate. That is against the law. But that is exactly what is happening with these school districts, which is what caused the problem. Pennsylvania trails most other states when it comes to state funding for public schools. They are the 10th highest cost per student in the nation. Otto.
Are you going to address the $3.5 billion they're holding in reserves, the school districts across the state?
Yeah.
Yep. Actually, it's now 3.9.
$3.5 billion.
$3.9 billion in reserves. Why does the school district need a reserve? It doesn't. Because if something happens, who's responsible to take care of the system? Government, the state government. Now, I'm going to round this off at $4 billion. If we take $4 billion times 5%, okay, assuming that the debt, which is ridiculous, assuming that the debt is they're paying a 5% interest, take 5% of the $4 billion, how much savings would we have? Now, from a financial point of view, anybody that thinks that, well, I don't want to save that 5%, I want to make 1. That makes no logical, mathematical sense. That's a 75% loss. And because of their incompetence in the financial side of this, who pays for this? All of you. And I think it's time to change this. Senate bill eliminating property taxes, largely unchanged by amendment. This is also put out by this wonderful group here. Eliminates all property taxes except the amount to pay the debt. They think that's a bad idea. How many in this room think this is a good idea? Raise your hand. It's a good idea, not a bad one. And I love this one. Makes permanent the state budget cuts to education. Okay? Who cut the educational funding? Was it Corbett or was it Rendell?
Rendell.
Anybody know?
Rendell.
State website. Corbett did not. Rendell in 2009-10 cut the funding by $654 million, and then in 2010 and 11 he cut it by $1 billion. He offset it with the stimulus. Now also on that block of money was not supposed to go to education. That money was supposed to fix our roads.
Which we're now taxed on.
Okay? And because of the failed government, You all heard about the new transportation bill that we got?
Oh, yes.
I call it the financial disaster bill because it is going to hurt the economy in this state. Drains billions of dollars from public schools in upcoming years by artificially capping state educational funding. Artificially capping? Or stopping a runaway train, which isn't. According to the IFO report, while the people on Social Security over the last several years have had an increase of an average of 2%, CPI nationally was 4%, but in the state it was 4.5%. We got hit with an average of a 6% increase per year over the last 12 years. How can we keep up with that? There needs to be a cap on this.
To get back to the fund that the school districts have, the $4 billion we're talking about, there used to be a cap on that for individual school districts can only have so much money in that account. Is it still in existence?
Well, most times what government does is, well, we hit that cap, I guess we just need to adjust it.
Yeah.
Okay? They never use it into consideration when they do this stuff. Jeopardize school funding by relying on a more volatile source. Well, I'm going to give you a statement that Rendell said. I will never sign off on property tax elimination because if I can leverage their house, I can mandate that they pay it. That is a statement that Rendell made. Now they want to say property taxes are not volatile to the market. Out in Pittsburgh, U.S. Steel appealed their assessment. Their assessment was dropped on the property by $1.3 million. Do you think that dropped their taxes? It did. Senator Fumo, before he went to jail. Good legislator, right? He lived in an area that the average properties were between $2 and $5 million. His assessment was $250,000. So can assessments be manipulated? The answer is yes. In Berks County, in a development where all the homes were all but the same, the assessments in 12 of the properties in there was 50% of what the assessments of the rest of the houses were. That system can be manipulated, and it is unfair. The other thing that's unfair about that system is this. Is hospitals expanding? So they go and they buy land. That at one time there was taxes on it. Now because they bought it, and it's medical, there's no taxes on it anymore. So what we do is shrink the tax base and drive up the taxes for you. It's totally unfair. Or imposing a sales tax on food for the first time, making Pennsylvania one of the only 3 states to tax food. Everything on the WIC list is exempt. So was that statement from them a lie or deceptive? I would say so. Now they're complaining because of the exemptions. They want the exemptions for these people. They don't want funeral parlors to pay a tax. I got a question for you. Would you rather pay a tax on your funeral once, or do you want to pay the thing every single month in school taxes? Think about that. They don't want to tax a county. If you go have your taxes done, which the average person goes to that account once a year, and the fee is from 200 to 300 bucks. So we pay 7% of that, we pay $14 to $21 a year, not $3,000 to $4,000 a year. But now, why do they want this stuff exempt? Do the wealthy and the affluent, especially the ones that have trust, do they have to see these people a lot often than that? Are their legal bills a lot higher than that? They are. And that's why they want to be exempt, because their cost is going to go up. And I love this. Elimination. All property taxes for corporations. Do corporations pay taxes? No.
Technically not.
You pay them. It is an expense for the business. It is a pass-through. The one I laughed about the most is when the federal government had a fit that Exxon made $40 billion in 1 year. But I never heard once anybody from the federal government state to the people that they collected $120 billion in taxes from Exxon. And guess who paid all that money? You. Corporate taxes is nothing but a deception. That the government wants to say, we want to tax these people, but in reality, you're paying that tax, and they're not telling you the truth. Now, does that mean if we would eliminate all corporate taxes, that they would pass all the profits down through? No. But I'll tell you what, from a financial point of view, I would like them to eliminate this, let Exxon make a little bit more money, therefore they pay out more dividends. How many of you have a 401k? How many pay your pensions? IRAs. Guess who gets them dividends? You do. And I'm tired of hearing this cry by some people that, well, only the wealthy make money off of investments. 52% of all the mutual fund sales in the United States is controlled by middle America. 52%. Down to pensions and stuff like that. Another thing they state here is statewide, 3 years after close, $1 billion in state reductions for classroom funding. Reduction for classroom funding. What about cutting the salaries and the benefits? The unions never take into consideration that this should all go down together. So who do they take away from? The kids. And they blame that on you. And I'm not going to go into their pensions at this point. They also state that we don't fund enough to education, but the average spending per student by state, Pennsylvania is 11th. The 11th highest in the nation. That's a little bit of information before we go into their presentation. Harold Gunn.
Rich.
Yep.
Okay. This is who put this agenda together.
Question back there.
Rich, I just want to comment on the lady's question over here on the reserve funds. They are capped at 8%, but it's 8% of the budget, and every time the school district raises its budget, therefore the cap goes up. It's still at 8%, but that's how it's expanding.
Okay. Any other questions about this?
Rich, can you give us an overview of HB 76 before you go into this? Just-
Actually, I was going to make the adjustment going through it.
Perfect.
Okay?
Excuse me.
Yes.
I have a question. Do you have any kind of a chart or anything showing what the other states pay? Like, do they have taxes like we do, or do they have no property taxes? I mean, real estate school tax.
States do, but they're a lot different,
In what way?
okay? I don't have a chart comparing to all other states, okay, the differences. Is that your question?
Well, yes, I guess I think that's the same point. If we could say, you know, like we're the, maybe we're like maybe 6 states or 10 states out of the country that do this, and the others don't. I mean,
Okay. We are the 10th highest tax state in the nation. On all taxes. There isn't a
how
number
the
for
other
that.
states pay their schools, is what I'm asking.
For school. There is a breakdown. If you wanted to Google all of that, you can actually find out what each different state pays per student. Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking, what do the homeowners tax?
How long is it funded?
Okay. And again, the tax foundation has all that information on it. Tax foundation
You don't
got,
know what that is. You yourself don't know what that is.
they're all different. I'll give you an example. Delaware. Right down the street from us, it was a house for sale in Shillington. I took that size house, that size lot, priced it in Delaware. Not so much for the cost difference, for the tax difference. The taxes down the street was $3,700. The taxes in Delaware was $436. Okay?
Because they have DuPont in their building.
Well, yes and no. See, what Delaware has done is they have the lowest corporate tax. Okay? You look at your bank cards, Zales, they're all down there. Why? Because the corporate taxes are less. Okay? So what Delaware did is shrink what was coming from an individual, but expanded it out so they had more money. And that's the reason that the property taxes in Delaware is so much less. There is no sales tax in Delaware. Okay? Now their income tax is a little bit higher, but no sales tax. And the majority of the prices in Delaware, if you compare item to item, is normally 10 to 15% cheaper than it is here. I actually had a debate about that with one of our legislators in his office. So I had him call Sears over to Berkshire Mall to get a price on the battery. Then I had him call Sears in Dover. Same Sears company. Get a price on the battery. The battery was 12% less and no sales tax. How can they do it? They have a fair taxation system. By reducing taxes, it spreads everything out because we have more people here. That's how they got away with it. It's not just the DuPonts. Okay?
But isn't that true that things are gonna start changing in Delaware because more and more people are going down there? And there's more and more kids going to schools down there? Because I have friends down there and they told me that they're just gonna institute a tax on gasoline.
Yep. Most of the states are doing making the same mistake. Okay? And unfortunately, a lot of the politicians over the last 10 years in Delaware have changed.
Whose brain? Abby someone. Abby someone. Abby who? Abby normal.